Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Warren Lemke. I'm with Vancouver Police. I'm a superintendent in charge of the north area of the city. Back in September of 2007, I got a call from Chief Constable Chu, and he said, I have good news for you and bad news for you. He says, the good news is we're promoting you to superintendent. I said, thank you. What is the bad news, Chief? He says, you have the north end of the city, which is everything from the west end to the P&E, includes the business district, the entertainment district, and of course the downtown east side. So it took me back to the downtown east side where I'd been back and forth in 24 years of policing, and the one thing that I noticed was nothing had changed. In fact, it was worse, a lot worse. With regard to the west end, the business district, theft from autos were out of control. Reported theft from autos average around 400 a month. Well, you times that by 3 because so many of them are not reported now. You can see the volume of crime that we're getting, property crime in the West End. Commercial B&Es, break and enters, 50 to 60 a month. Just imagine the loss to people, the victimization that goes on there. And then the downtown east side with open-air drug use, with all the property crime that supports that open-air drug use. The violence that goes on in the downtown east side with beatings and stabbings and all the issues that we read about almost on a weekly basis. So I'm down there and I'm shaking my head and wondering, what are we going to do? Because there are 3 things that are quite obvious when you're in the downtown east side, and in fact when you're dealing with chronic offenders in Vancouver. Those 3 things that really are the 3 things that if we correct will make a huge difference in crime reduction in Vancouver. That's homelessness, mental illness, and drug addiction. If we can get a grip on those 3 things, we will reduce crime and improve the quality of life for people in our city, and in fact everywhere else. I think all communities have similar problems, just not as congested as the downtown east side. In Vancouver, we have a chronic offenders program where we track chronic offenders. In the United Kingdom, they consider a chronic offender someone who commits or is charged with 2 criminal offenses in a calendar year. If we took that measurement in Vancouver, we would be following thousands of people. So we've had to modify it a little bit, and we track them when they have 12 or more in a year. So we have 350 people that we're monitoring that have 12 or more charges in a year, some of them with over 150 convictions on their records. So we see this, what's commonly known as a revolving door. We see all these things happening. Our police officers are putting people into the system. They come out of the system. More people are being victimized. It's happening over and over again. And oh, did I tell you in September of 2007 I had a full head of curly hair? I forgot to mention that part. Well, it's starting to slowly grow back because there is some light at the end of the tunnel. The experiences in New York at Red Hook and the Manhattan Community Courts have been quite profound in that city, and they've come out here now. With the community court in Vancouver and the work that they're doing, with the, and I'm not taking any political sides here, everybody, but the province's purchase of 18 SRO single-room occupancy buildings in the downtown core that were traditionally some of our worst. They're renovating them and putting in support so the mentally ill, the drug addicted, the homeless will have a safe and supportive and secure place to live. And also the province and the city of Vancouver working together to build a dozen supportive housing projects within the city. It'll be another 1,200 rooms. So I see this light at the end of the tunnel, and a big part of that is the community court. We in the Vancouver Police Department are going to be feeding the clients to the community court. It's the arrests that we make on the street that end up in Judge Gove's lap. I'm sorry, Your Honor, about that, but it is our job. We will work very closely with the community court. We will work with them to take a different approach to deal with offenders, to try and deal with the issues that are causing them to offend. And we look forward to the coming weeks and months to some real positive change, not just in the downtown east side, but all the way from Clark Drive to the West End, which is the catchment area of that court. And I assure you the Vancouver Police Department will be involved in any way that we can to help make this a success. And I'll turn it over to the real architect, I think, is Mr. Opal. Thank you.
Well, the superintendent has hit the nail right on the head when he said that after being away for a while, he noticed that nothing much has changed. And I can tell you that all the times that I've been in the criminal justice system, we haven't managed to get a handle on property crime, street crime. And I wonder why. You know, we look at some of the American cities who have far worse socioeconomic problems than we have, and they managed to do something. So when we look at what's happening in the downtown east side with respect to, first of all, if you step back a bit, most of our crime is property crime. Over 80% is property crime. That crime is committed by probably less than 10% of the people. And of those people who are committing the property crime, they are, for the most part, addicted to drugs, alcohol, they're mentally ill, or they're homeless, or a combination of all four of those factors. So we have a choice. Should we keep doing things the way we have done things for the last 35 to 40 years? That is, they arrest them, we prosecute them, they jail them, the jails are full, and then they come out again, and the root causes are still there, because it doesn't matter how long we send a person to jail for, the fact is they're not going to get cured of their ills and of all the causes of their crimes. They're going to come out worse. So because they still have the addictions. So then they become the chronic offenders. That's when you get what Warren was just talking about, people with 30, 40, and 50 convictions. There's nowhere for them to go. So what they've done in the United States, and particularly in New York City, two areas in New York, the Midtown Manhattan court and the court over in Brooklyn, is they've established a community court. And the community court essentially is a problem-solving court. In other words, instead of dealing with the symptoms of crime, you start dealing with some of the root causes of crime. Now, stepping back a bit, when I talked about incarcerating people and then releasing people and they commit the crimes all over again, you know, we can do what some of the American states have done, and that is build more jails. In fact, our jails are now full. We are double bunking and triple bunking in the jails. I don't want our province to be like the state of California, which is now spending more money on jails than they are in education. So is Oregon, so is Connecticut, Rhode Island, and there are about 2 other states where the funding for prisons has surpassed the funding for education. So what we need to do is we have to get to the causes of crime. And by that I mean, let's start dealing with the addictions. Let's start dealing with the problems as to why those people are committing those crimes. And we start assessing those people, and we start putting those people through the system and rehabilitate them and cure them. And those people that don't have homes, we find housing for them. So I'm really pleased to say that the government got involved in this in 2005. It was actually the report that suggested this came out in 2004. And I was appointed in 2005, and by that time the wheels had started to turn. And what this means from the perspective of government policy is that we start working in a collaborative way. See, one of the problems with the criminal justice system is we've always worked in silos. Everybody thinks they're independent. The lawyers are independent, the prosecutors are independent, the police are independent, the judges have to be independent. So we go along our narrow routes and we don't get together with one another. The fact is, a person who commits these crimes is mentally ill. We need the healthcare system. And if that person is homeless, we need the Minister of Housing to get involved. So